We have two special guests with us to introduce the film today. One, the person I'm going to introduce, is one of Canada's finest filmmakers, one of the most innovative and stylish filmmakers to emerge out of Canada. His films include Rude, Planet of Junior Brown, Love Come Down, Lie With Me, and Poor Boy's Game. Please join me in welcoming Clement Virgo.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you so much for coming out on this warm Sunday. In 1988, Norman Jewison set up the CFC, which was an institute that he kind of envisioned for filmmakers to come and have a chance to continue with their educations. Now the CFC trains editors, actors, writers, directors. And in 1991, they had a program for filmmakers of color. It was the first program, and it was a 1-month program. And in that 1-month program, I was fortunate to be one of those young filmmakers. I went back to the CFC 1 year later and made my first short film, one of my first short films that won TIFF in 1993, and then I made my first feature film out of the CFC. The CFC is committed to making feature films, and I was one of the first to make a film. With that film, I really got to know Norman because I was having trouble with the cut of the film, and Norman was gracious enough to come into the editing room and help us to sort out that cut. And that film eventually went to Cannes and premiered at TIFF and eventually started my career. So I owe a great debt to the CFC and to Norman Jewison. The film that you're about to see came out at a critical time. It came out in 1967. 1967 was a year that cinema was really changing. It was a year of Bonnie and Clyde. It was a year of The Graduate. And of course, it was a year of In the Heat of the Night. It came out in the height of the civil rights movement when blacks in America were really kind of asserting their rights, and this film was at the vanguard of that change. In that time, in less than a year after the film came out in 1967-68, Martin Luther King was shot dead in Memphis. April of '68, and in June of '68, Robert Kennedy was also killed, and Norman knew Robert Kennedy. The film, of course, helped to kind of usher in a new era of black images on film. There's a famous scene in that. There's two key moments in that film, in Norman's film. One is the slap that I think helped to usher in a new era of black heroes on screen. And the second is when Sidney Poitier says, they call me Mr. What? That's right, so you've always seen the film then. That's obviously a very, very key moment. Norman has been instrumental in my filmmaking life. He's from Toronto here. He grew up in the beaches, and Norman, I think, is a great smuggler. He's a great smuggler of ideas. I think he would have been a great smuggler of contrabands, but he's a great smuggler of cinematic ideas, because in his films, he's rare as a film artist because he creates films that both entertain, provoke, and stir change. He's a filmmaker of social justice. And In the Heat of the Night is one of the 3 black films that he made. The second of which being Soldier's Story. If you guys have a chance to see it, it's a great film. And the third of which is Hurricane, which was shot right here in Toronto. And of course, he's made other films that deal with social justice and change, all at the same time entertaining and provoking the audience. So please join me in welcoming my mentor, Mr. Norman Jewison.
Boy, you grew up. Well, this film, I think Clement hit on it when he talked about timing. I was in. I want to just tell you a quick story. I was in Sundance. I was in Idaho, and I was skiing in Idaho in 1966. And this film was made in 1967. And so I was there, and my kid broke his leg in a ski race that afternoon, and Robert Kennedy's kid broke his leg in the same race. So I went to the hospital where they were setting the legs, and there was Robert Kennedy sitting there. And nobody said anything for a while, and I knew it was, but I didn't want to invade his privacy, so he was sitting there. And all of a sudden he looked at me. He says, "And what do you do?" And I said, "Well, I'm a filmmaker." "What kind of films do you make?" I said, "Well, I'm working on a film right now, and it's about a black detective in Philadelphia who goes to visit his mother in Mississippi, and he gets stuck in a small rural town where a murder has taken place, and he's told by his chief in Philadelphia to help if he can, because he's quite a knowledgeable detective. And in this town, there's a chief of police, a little bit of a redneck, and I don't have to tell you what the conditions were in America in 1966, 67. There was a kind of a racial revolution going on. So anyway, Robert Kennedy, I told this to Robert Kennedy, and I said, so that's the idea of the picture, and it's the relationship between these two men that I'm really interested in, because they're both policemen, and one's white, one's black, and I guess the film is about tolerance. So he looked at me, and he said, "This could be a very important film, Norman." And I thought, well, gee, he's the first person who ever said that. Because when you make a movie, you're so concerned with wondering whether anybody's going to show up that you really don't have a time to think about the effect of the film on the audience. You've got other things on your mind. But he was the first one to tell me it's an important film. And then he looked at me and he said, "Timing is everything. In politics, and in art, and in life itself." And it's something I never forgot. And so Bobby Kennedy was right. And when the film won the New York Critics Award for Best Dramatic Film, you know, there's a reception at Sardi's and they give out the awards. And who was giving out the award that day but the senator from New York, Robert Kennedy? And he said, "And for Best Dramatic Picture, In the Heat of the Night, directed by Norman Jewison." So I came up to get the award. And he looked at me and he says, "See, I told you the timing was right." So I guess Robert was right. And unfortunately, a few years later, I was doing a film with Melina Mercouri, and the Greek junta, the generals had taken over Greece and kind of excommunicated Melina at that time for her political views. And she was married to Jules Dassin, the French director. And she wanted to meet Robert Kennedy very much. And he wanted to meet her. And we were in a Chinese restaurant having a drink in Los Angeles. And we were to meet Robert Kennedy at 10 p.m. that night at John Frankenheimer's house in Malibu. And unfortunately, that was the night he was assassinated at the Roosevelt Hotel. And it was a tragic evening for America. It was a tragic evening for everyone, for his family, and but especially for the country, I think, because like his brother, I think he would have made a great president. And so here we are tonight looking at a film that ended up having a tremendous effect on America in 1967. I think it's the first film where, as you said, as you referred to, where a black man slapped a white man back. I think it was the first film. And that was a slap that was heard around the world in a way. So thanks very much for coming today. And I think you'll enjoy the film. Sidney Poitier gives a brilliant performance in this film. And he wouldn't go south of the Mason-Dixon line, he told me. So, because he and Harry Belafonte had been harassed and they had been bumped by a pickup truck in Georgia, and he was frightened. And he said, "You got to promise me we're not going south of the Mason-Dixon line when we do this picture." And I said, "No, we'll find a place." So I shot the film in Sparta, Illinois, very close to the Mississippi River, and a southern town, I would say. And then I talked Sidney into allowing me to go to Tennessee, Dyersburg, Tennessee, to shoot the cotton picking sequences and the slap, and that's where that was shot, in Tennessee. But we only stayed there for 3 days. And we were glad to get out. So anyway, thank you very much for coming today. It's a great thrill for me to see some interest in a film that I made so many years ago. But I do think it's a film which resonates with the audience, and so they call me Mr. Tibbs.
Thank you.